Right, we take you to one of the stories on our Watch on the Agenda this morning, and that is the Pope's visit to South Sudan. We now cross to SABC News correspondent Patrick Oyet. He is in the capital, Juba. Patrick, thank you so much for your time this hour. So, how important is Pope Francis' visit to Sudan?
It is extremely important, and I can tell you that Friday was declared here a public holiday. That tells you of the importance that the government attaches to this visit, and that is basically because the country, the entire country, is yearning for peace, and the Pope has played a crucial role in ensuring that peace really comes to this country. 5 years ago, he summoned the leaders of South Sudan to Rome, where they went. He talked to them, he kissed their feet. They came here, formed a government. Of course, not all has been smooth. There have been clashes, there have been intercommunal violence. Many people continue to lose their lives. So the coming of the Pope here is really seen to many that it will reinforce the idea of having a lasting peace in South Sudan. For example, some religious people or faithful or Christians had to walk 400 kilometers. They took 9 days to walk to come to Juba to ensure that the Pope's arrival gets them there here. They witness, and from Friday onwards up to today, the Juba is actually shut down. The crowd that I saw yesterday could only be compared to the crowd I saw during independence. This morning, they are in the church. From the church, the Pope will go and meet internally displaced people, because the country has 2 million people who are actually forced out of their homes. They're living in internally displaced camps because of violence. He will meet with them. Later on, he will lead another prayer at the Freedom Square. So yes, it's very, very important, and everybody's expectation is that his talks to the political leaders is bring lasting peace to the country. And indeed, he said that yesterday. He asked the political leaders in South Sudan to really work for peace, to work for justice, because if you know a bit about the history of this country, South Sudan and Sudan fought for actually 21 years. That was the northern Sudan, which is dominated by the Arabs and Muslims, and then the southern part, which is dominated by Christians and largely Catholic, of course. They fought for 21 years. Thereafter, a peace deal, the country gained independence and again plunged into another conflict. So it has been war, and people are saying, no, we want peace. And the expectation is that with the coming of the religious leaders, at least there will be peace.
So now, Patrick, we understand the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has joined Pope Francis on his visit to the country. So what was the reason behind this move?
Actually, the issue is the Archbishop of Canterbury is here, as well as the Moderator General of the Church of Scotland is also here. So all the religious leaders basically have come together to come to South Sudan. And the major issue is, of course, to push for the current peace deal implementation, which is very slow, because by now we should have had elections, we should have had a new government in place, and all these things have not happened. Elections are scheduled for next year. The constitution making process is ongoing. It was supposed to have been done long time ago, because the country is running on an interim constitution. There is a need for a permanent constitution, which is in the agreement. It has never been done. So there are so many things when it comes to issues of the peace deal implementation which are not well, and that's why these religious leaders have actually come here. This is their major reason for coming here. And as I earlier mentioned, you know, the people of this country have fought for injustice. They have fought against discrimination, against killings, against very many forms of underdevelopment. So it is really not good that the very people who fought against these kinds of injustices come to power and they start practicing this injustice against their own people. So the church is here to really tell the South Sudanese people in general that let us now work for the justice that we spend so much of our time fighting for, of which the church supported the South Sudanese people, the Christian people of the Sudan by then, to ensure that they get the justice. And unfortunately, when the country got independence, this has not been the case. So this is the major reason as to why these church leaders are here.
top of our conversation, you mentioned, that this is a visit of peace. So the country is expected to go to the polls, as you've also rightfully mentioned. So your fair assessment on the ground, is South Sudan ready?
Up to now, I can say, and many people think, South Sudan is not ready for election because, as I mentioned, if you want to go for election, you must go for election based on some arrangements. And where is that arrangement? For example, you need a permanent constitution to create a government. And right now, that constitution is not there. So it is the constitution to form a government. It's not a government to be formed and then a constitution made. Now, that constitution is not there. The Electoral Commission, which is supposed to really, prepare, for example, conduct census and then prepare for voter registration and so forth, is also still not fully established, is not there. The electoral law also is still, being discussed in Parliament. So there is still no law which can be used for example, to conduct election. So the country is not yet really prepared, and there is hope that from now to perhaps December next year, there will be some kind of preparation. But it is still difficult also because, look, there is also a problem of subnational violence at local levels where a community attacks another community, either because of cattle raiding or because of conflict between farmers and cattle keepers. And the government has not yet managed to address this security concern very well. There is also other groups who are still also opposed to the current peace deal implementation, and they are also armed groups. So there is negotiations going on. So when you look at the whole situation, there is still a lot that needs to be done before elections really do take place. And it will be a very, very big task for the current government to accomplish all those before actually people go for election. Another thing, more than 2 million people are still outside as refugees. These people need to, in a way, participate in election because South Sudan is only a country of about 13 million people. So if you have 2 million people outside the country, you have 2 million displaced internally, 4 million are already out. So you find that really challenges are there, and these challenges, addressing them is not easy. Some of them need money at the time when the government is saying it doesn't even have the money. So it's a big challenge. It's a very huge challenge for the government to conduct elections next year.
But in terms of international support, is Juba still enjoying community support ahead of this election? Because you mentioned some of the challenges right now on the ground.
Yeah, to a smaller extent, yes. For example, the United Nations mission in South Sudan 2 weeks ago said they would be able to help South Sudan prepare for election. But that is only the United Nations. The rest of the international donors, let me put it that way, are really fatigued, let me put it that way, because they have been supporting this country for a very long period of time, and they expected peace to come. Peace has not come. For example, you know that the U.S. has withdrawn its support even to the peace monitoring bodies, and that tells you that the Troika also, like the U.S., the Norway, and the U.K. have also withdrawn support. They are saying they don't see much progress being made in terms of peace deal implementation, and that has a huge impact in the whole country. And if you see also the United Nations World Food Program is saying like more than half of the population require food aid. So that tells you of the challenges that are there. The money which used to come to South Sudan is no longer coming. Of course, there's the issue of Russia, Ukraine, where many international donors are now focusing on. So the kind of money that used to come here is no longer there. The support is dwindling, and that is a major concern. That means the government has to find a way of funding most of these major activities that are supposed to take place, like constitution making process, and also the issues of election. And also we have had problems of economic challenges, like the economy was ruined due to the war. Inflation is very high, the local currency has lost value, and salaries of civil servants is very small, and they cannot afford basic needs. So there are a lot of challenges, and this of course needs international donors, and the government is crying, saying they need support from the international community. That support is not forthcoming.
Right, before I let you go, just give us, just a quick rundown of what the program is looking like for today.
Yes, today at the moment, the Pope and the two other religious leaders are in the church. They are going to leave the church and go to a hall we call here in South Sudan Freedom Hall. They will meet with internally displaced persons. They will be there for some hours. Later at 6 p.m. our time, which is, by the way, your time also, we are on the same time zone. They will move to Dr. John Garang Mausoleum, which is an equivalent of a Freedom Square, where prayers will be conducted. Thereafter, they will go and take their rest. Tomorrow morning, they will again return to the Freedom Square, where the whole of Juba has been called to come and witness a prayer, and then thereafter, they will leave South Sudan. So basically, that is the program that is on.
In Juba for us, that's SABC News correspondent Patrick Oyet on Pope Francis's visit to South Sudan.